Hello and welcome to part 2 of our read aloud of The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. We are on chapter 12. It was basically the White Witch and the dwarf that she was working with and Edmund were all on the sleigh. And as they're riding through, they're trying to figure out what's going on because winter was melting and it was turning into spring. And that's what I had you guys draw a picture of and try to visualize as that was all happening, which is kind of what it looks like outside, like kind of gloomy. But as the spring is happening, all the flowers are growing and the skies are turning blue. So it is a really beautiful sight. So we are going to continue where we left off, and I'm going to stop and ask questions along the way, and I want you to think about that. I totally forgot what I was about to say. So let's just get started. Chapter 12 is called Peter's First Battle. While the dwarf and the White Witch were saying this, miles away, the beaver and all the children were walking on hour after hour into what seemed like a delicious dream. Do you think they really mean it's like tasty delicious, or do you think they mean like more like delicious as in this is a really great thing? Probably like this is a really great thing, right? They're not tasting the dream. Long ago, they had left the coats behind them, and by now they had even stopped saying to one another, "Look, there's a kingfisher," or I say, "bluebells," or "What was that lovely smell?" or "Just listen to that thrush." They walked on in silence, drinking it all in, passing through patches of warm sunlight into cool green thickets and out again into wide mossy glades where tall elms raised the leafy roof far overhead, and then into dense masses of flowering currant and among hawthorn bushes where the sweet smell was almost overpowering. They had been just as surprised as Edmund when they saw winter vanishing and the whole wood passing in a few hours or so from No, they were just like comparing the seasons of January, which is winter, and May, which is like really the heart of spring. They hadn't even known for certain, as the witch did, that this is what would happen when Aslan came to Narnia. But they all knew that it was her spells which had produced the endless winter, and therefore they all knew when this magic spring began that something had gone wrong, and badly wrong with the witch's schemes. And after the thaw had been going on for some time, they all realized that the witch would no longer be able to use her sledge. After that, they didn't hurry so much, and they allowed themselves more rests and longer ones. They were pretty tired by now, of course, but not what I'd call bitterly tired, only slow and feeling very dreamy and quiet inside, as one does when one is coming to the end of a long day in the open. Susan had a slight blister on one heel. They had left the course of the big river some time ago, for one had to turn a little to the right, that meant a little to the south, to reach the place of the stone table. Even if this had not been their way, they couldn't have kept to the river valley once the thaw began, for with all that melting snow, the river was soon in a flood, a wonderful, roaring, thundering yellow flood, and their path would have been underwater. And now the sun got low, and the light got redder, and the shadows got longer, and the flowers began to think about closing. "Not long now," said Mr. Beaver, and began leading them uphill across some deep, springy moss. It felt very nice under their tired feet, in a place where only tall trees grew very wide apart. The climb, coming at the end of the long day, made them all pant and blow. Suddenly they were at the top, and this is what they saw. They were on a green, open space from which you could look down on the forest, spreading as far as one could see in every direction, except right ahead. There, far to the east, was something twinkling and moving. "By gum," whispered Peter to Susan, "the sea!" What's another word for sea? An ocean, right. A big body of water. In the very middle of this open hilltop was the stone table. It was a great grim slab of gray stone, supported on 4 upright stones. It looked very old, and it was cut all over with strange lines and figures that might be the letters of an unknown language. They gave you a curious feeling when you looked at them. The next thing they saw was a pavilion pitched on one side of the open place. A wonderful pavilion it was, and especially now when the light of the setting sun fell upon it, with sides of what looked like yellow silk and cords of crimson, and tent pegs of ivory, and high above it on a pole a banner which bore a red rampant lion, fluttering in the breeze, which was blowing in their faces from the far-off sea. While they were looking at this, they heard the sound of music on their right, and turning in that direction, they saw what they had come to see. Aslan stood in the center of a crowd of creatures who had grouped themselves round him in the shape of a half moon. There were tree men and well women, dryads and naiads, as they used to be called in our world, who had stringed instruments. It was they who had made the music. There were 4 great centaurs. The horse part of them was like huge English farm horses, and the man part of whom one carried his crown and the other his standard. But as for Aslan himself, the beavers and the children didn't know what to do or say when they saw him. People who have not been in Narnia sometimes think that a thing cannot be good and terrible at the same time. If the children had ever thought so, they were cured of it now. For when they tried to look at Aslan's face, they just caught a glimpse of the golden mane and the great, royal, solemn eyes. And then they found they couldn't look at him, and all went trembly. "Go on, Mr. Beaver," whispered Mr. Beaver. "No," whispered Peter. "You first." "No, son of Adam before animals," whispered Mr. Beaver back again. "Susan," whispered Peter, "what about you? Ladies first." "No, you're the eldest," whispered Susan. And of course, the longer they went on doing this, the more awkward they felt. Then at last Peter realized it was up to him. He drew his sword and raised it to the salute, and hastily saying to the others, "Come on, pull yourselves together," he advanced to the lion and said, "We have come, Aslan." "Welcome, Peter, son of Adam," said Aslan. "Welcome, Susan and Lucy, daughters of Eve. Welcome, he-beaver and she-beaver." His voice was deep and rich, and somehow took the fidgets out of them. They now felt glad and quiet, and it didn't seem awkward to them to stand and say nothing. "But where is the 4th?" asked Aslan. "Who is the 4th?" "Edmund, right. And where is he?" "With the White Witch. I hope that you're answering all my questions. And join the White Witch, O Aslan," said Mr. Beaver. And then something made Peter say, "That was partly my fault, Aslan. I got angry with him, and I think I helped him to go wrong." And Aslan said nothing either to excuse Peter or to blame him, but merely stood looking at him with his great unchanging eyes. And it seemed to be that all of them were standing with nothing to be said. "Please, Aslan," said Lucy, "can anything be done to save Edmund?" "All shall be done," said Aslan, "but it may be harder than you think." And then he was silent again for some time. Up to that moment, Lucy had been thinking about how royal and strong and peaceful his face looked. Now suddenly it came into her head that he looked sad as well. But the next minute, that expression was quite gone. The lion shook his mane and clapped his paws together. Terrible paws, thought Lucy, if he didn't know how to velvet them, and said, "Meanwhile, let the feast be prepared. Ladies, take these daughters of Eve to the pavilion and minister to them." When the girls had gone, Aslan laid his paw, although it was velveted, it was very heavy, on Peter's shoulder and said, "Come, son of Adam," and I will show you a far-off sight of the castle where you are to be king." And Peter, with his sword still drawn in his hand, went with the lion to the eastern edge of the hilltop. There was a beautiful sight that met their eyes. The sun was setting behind their backs. That meant the whole country below them lay in the evening light. Forest and hills and valleys, and winding away like a silver snake, the lower part of the great river. And beyond all of this, miles away, was the sea. And beyond the sea, the sky, reflection of the sunset. But just where the land of Narnia met the sea, in fact, at the mouth of the great river, there was something on a little hill shining. It was shining because it was a castle, and of course the sunlight was reflected from all the windows, which looked towards Peter and the sunset, but to Peter it looked like a great star resting on the seashore. "That, oh man," said Aslan, "is Cair Paravel, with the 4 thrones, in one of which you must sit as king. I show it to you because you are the firstborn, and you will be high king over the rest." And once more Peter said nothing, for at that moment a strange noise woke the silence suddenly. It was like a bugle, but richer. "It is your sister's horn," said Aslan to Peter in a low voice, so low as to almost be a purr, if it is not disrespectful to think of a lion purring. For a moment Peter did not understand. Then when he saw all the other creatures start forward and heard Aslan say with a wave of his paw, "Back! Let the prince win his spurs," he did understand and set off running as hard as he could to the pavilion. And there he saw a dreadful sight. The naiads and dryads were scattering in every direction. Lucy was running towards him as fast as her short legs would carry her, and her face was as white as paper. Then he saw Susan make a dash for the tree, swing herself up, followed by a huge gray beast. At first, Peter thought it was a bear. Then he saw that it looked like an Alsatian. I don't know what that is. We'll have to find out. Though it was far too big to be a dog. Then he realized that it was a wolf standing on its hind legs, with its front paws against the tree trunk. On end. Susan had not been able to get higher than the second big branch. One of her legs hung down so that her foot was only an inch or 2 above the snapping teeth. Peter wondered why she did not get higher, or at least take a better grip. Then he realized she was just going to faint, and that if she fainted, she would fall off. Peter did not feel very brave. Instead, he felt like he was going to be sick. But that made no difference to what he had to do. He rushed straight up to the monster and aimed a slash of his sword at its side. The stroke never reached the wolf. Quick as lightning, it turned around, its eyes flaming, and its mouth wide open in a howl of anger. If it had not been so angry that it simply had to howl, it would have got him at the throat at once. As it was, through all of this happened too quickly for Peter to think at all. He had just time to duck down and plunge his sword as hard as he could between the brute's forelegs into its heart. Then came a horror, alive nor dead. Its bared teeth knocked against his forehead, and everything was blood and heat and hair. A moment later, he found that the monster lay dead, and that he had drawn his sword out of it and was straightening his back and rubbing the sweat off of his face and out of his eyes. He felt tired all over. Then after a bit, Susan came down the tree. She and Peter felt very shaky when they met, and I won't say there wasn't kissing and crying on both sides, but in Narnia, no one thinks any the worse of you for that. "Quick, quick," shouted the voice of Aslan. "Centaurs, eagles, I see another wolf in the thickets, there behind you. He has just darted away. After him, all of you. He will be going to his mistress. Now is your chance to find the witch and rescue for." based on that sentence. He will be going to his mistress. Now is the chance to find the witch and rescue the fourth son of Adam. The wolves work for the white witch, right? So they came and they found where the other children were in Aslan, but Peter killed that one. But there was another one that's now going to run back and tell the witch what he just saw. Instantly, with a thunder of hooves and beating of wings, a dozen or so of the swiftest creatures disappeared into the gathering darkness. Peter, still out of breath, turned and saw Aslan close at hand. "You've forgotten to clean your sword," said Aslan. It was true. Peter blushed when he looked at the bright blade and saw it smeared with the wolf's hair and blood. He stooped down and wiped it clean on the grass, then wiped it dry on his coat. "Hand it to me and kneel, son of Adam," said Aslan. And when Peter had done so, he struck him with the flat of the blade and said, "Rise up, Sir Peter Wolfsbane, and whatever happens, never forget to wipe your sword." All right, that is the end of chapter 12. What I want you to do today is I want you to write me, I will make an assignment for it in each of your reading groups, but I want you to write me a couple of sentences of what you would do or how you would feel if someone that you had never met before came up and told you that you were going to be king or queen of Narnia, of this kingdom. Because that's what happens to Peter, right? The Aslan comes and he finds him, and then he says, "Listen, I want to show you something. This whole nation, this whole country, this whole land is going to be yours, and you're going to be the king of everything." What would you? The wolf comes and he has to fight him. But I want you to think about that. What would happen how would you feel if that happened to you? I will write an example for you. So I would write how I would feel. And then I want you to write just a couple sentences. It doesn't have to be long, but I want you to put yourself in Peter's shoes and think about how that would make you feel. What would you do? Would you make any rules? Would you feel like, oh, I don't really want to do that? Would you want to do that? Just kind of let me know how you feel. So it's pretty open-ended. You can get creative with it. You can draw me a picture if you want, and you can attach a picture on there. Get creative. I just want you to think about that because that would be kind of a cool experience to go through. I will continue our read aloud on Monday or Tuesday. I have to look at our schedule of things that we have to do. And we're getting close to the end of the book here. We've just got this much left. So thank you so much for listening. I miss you all. I wish you were all sitting in front of me, but this will have to do for now. So I miss you. I will see you guys later. Bye.